So let's start at the very beginning. The first couple of verses that we heard, God calls for the measurement of the temple of God and its worshippers, which tells us that this vision probably concerns the church. So everything that we go on to hear is a message for us all, for the church as a whole. And I want us to consider the two witnesses who we heard being introduced in the reading. The text says, "I will appoint my two witnesses. They will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. They are the two olive trees and the two lampstands, and they stand before the Lord of the earth." Olive trees, lampstands. If you're wondering why that's included, these seem to refer back to symbols that were used in the books of Ezekiel and Zechariah. In Ezekiel, olive trees were a representation of the roles of priests and leaders. The lampstands are from the Temple of Jerusalem, thereby representing God's people as a whole. If we smash these two images together, it seems our two witnesses represent the priesthood and leadership of the whole church and everyone in it. I know we're only 2 sentences in and my head is already swimming, but the important thing here is that the witnesses represent the church around the world testifying the gospel, and that includes you and me. It includes all that we're doing here this morning, all that we do outside this place during the week as we bear witness to God's love in our own lives. Think of what witnesses do in court. They've seen or experienced something, or they know and understand something. They have a knowledge, and they are called to repeat and to explain that knowledge to others. That's what we are all doing as we live out our faith. So we are all witnesses to Christ. Now remember that Revelation, unusually for the Bible, is all about the future. These are not historical events that have already happened. So what happens to the witnesses is what the church, or even ourselves, may expect to experience as we go about our faith. And we see in the reading that the witnesses continue to testify about the Lord. To begin with, they seem to be protected from their detractors, but that doesn't seem to last. The witnesses eventually get overpowered. Verse 7 says, "Now when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them and overpower and kill them. Their bodies will lie in the public square of the great city where also their Lord was crucified. For 3.5 days, some from every people, tribe, language, and nation will gaze on their bodies and refuse them burial." If you've ever felt that being a Christian in today's world is an uphill battle, you're not alone. If you've ever felt there is no hope, no possible way you could make even a jot of difference to the world, you won't be the only person who's ever thought that. When we see everything in the world that is going wrong, violence, war, greed, inequality, injustice, pain, it can be hard to see where it's all heading, how things could ever end up any better. It can seem like all the good we try to do in the world is simply having no effect. I mean, we all have those times when we're firing on all cylinders in our lives, in our faith and in our actions. But we also have those times when we feel overpowered, that the world is simply watching on, not wanting to hear the message of love for all that God calls us to share. But remember, this isn't unique to us. Even Jesus, Son of God, in flesh and blood, encountered the very same. He was scorned, he was refused, he was mocked, and then, despite having done nothing wrong, was strung up on a cross and left to die a cruel, painful death, watched on by people mocking and shouting. Does that sound familiar at all? Well, if it doesn't already sound like what the witnesses in our reading are experiencing, just hear what happens next. But after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and terror struck those who saw them. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." And they went up to heaven in a cloud while their enemies looked on. The story of the two witnesses echoes the story of Jesus' time on earth. His death, his resurrection, his ascension to heaven. Even when hope seemed lost, even when everything seemed to have gone just as wrong as it possibly could have, out of death came life. Even in the darkest, bleakest, most miserable of situations, hope shone through. Now, for us as the church, for us as individual disciples of Jesus, the prophecy of Revelation reminds us that hope is there. The battle is already won. God wins overall. We know the final score. The problem is, we're in the middle of the story. And I think that is where the waiting comes in. Now, as church, we worship, we witness, but we must also be prepared to wait. Now, hands up, confession time. I'm no good at waiting. I've been told this by my family for many, many years. I call it an eagerness to do well. They call it impatience. But either way, I want to see results. I want to get going with something. If something seems obvious to me, then I just want to get on with it straight away. And if I don't see immediate ramifications, then I'm liable to get pretty down about it, actually. But as I am so often reminded, God doesn't work to the beat of my drum. God's timing is so much better, so much wiser than that. When I look back at situations that seemed to frustrate me at the time for how slowly they seemed to go or how little they seemed to achieve, I realize that actually the time taken, the circuitous routes that they seemed to go around probably worked out for the best, actually. So I try to remind myself now to trust God's timing over my own importance. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean we sit back, put our feet up and do nothing, wait for something magical to happen. We are called to witness. There's not much witness happening if we do nothing at all. But we must remind ourselves and each other not to give up hope if things seem slow or tough or we meet resistance. Even if we feel defeated, even if we feel knocked down in our faith or in our lives, we wait for what we know will come. The awesome and restoring breath of God into our lives, into the world. The two witnesses received the transforming breath of God even after 3 days where it all seemed to be over. Jesus died on the cross, was buried even, before he rose again 3 days later. Now, we may have to wait longer than 3 days. but we too can receive God's breath of life, the breath of God that will transform and renew us, will shine light into the darkest of situations. The Church of Christ can never be killed, not while it continues to serve and hold God as its head. Not while it continues to witness to God's awesome and inclusive love for every person on this earth. So my prayer is, may we all continue to worship, to witness, and to wait, safe and secure in the knowledge that right will win out over wrong, justice will prevail, God's kingdom will come on earth as it is in heaven. Amen.